An elderly couple, Larry and Joan, have lived happily married for 65 years. Throughout their lives, they constantly argue about almost everything. At the moment, the subject of their dispute is how stupid, or not so stupid, it is to throw a gender reveal party, which has become fashionable these days. The couple is on their way to such a party, and Larry believes it is a complete waste of time. He also thinks they should tell family and friends about Joan's cancer. But the woman says she needs one more day. At the party, everyone's attention is drawn to a photograph of Luke, Joan's first husband. He died during the Korean War. Joan loved him deeply and remembers him as a good man. Suddenly Larry chokes on a pretzel and begins to suffocate. After his death, Larry finds himself young again, on a train heading in an unknown direction. He is surrounded by strange passengers of all ages and nationalities. The man is bewildered, unable to understand how he got there or what is happening at all. The train stops at a station. Still not understanding anything, Larry is swept into a mixed, chaotic crowd. It all feels like a surreal nightmare. Trying to make sense of it, he approaches a girl at the registration desk. She explains that this place is called the Crossroads and advises him to wait for his coordinator. Finally, a woman appears and introduces herself as Anna, Larry's afterlife coordinator. The man keeps insisting that he is not dead, that he merely fell and hit his head. Anna hands him a mirror, and when he sees his younger self, he cannot believe it. How is this even possible? The woman explains that at the crossroads, people return to the happiest period of their lives. For Larry, this means nothing for now. All he wants is to return to his wife, and he demands that Anna arrange a meeting with God. The woman replies that this is impossible. Even here, no one has ever seen God. The crossroads is not heaven, but a transitional state between life and eternity. Every person has the right to eternity, regardless of whether they were good or bad. Anna takes Larry to his temporary accommodations. He will stay there until he decides where, and with whom, he wants to spend his eternity. Since Larry now has plenty of time, he goes to explore the crossroads and stumbles upon a bar. When the man orders something stronger, the bartender immediately realizes it is his first day. Larry plans to choose some sunny, joyful eternity, and when Joan dies of cancer, he will return to the crossroads and together they will choose their eternity. The bartender explains that the decision to enter any eternity is final. An attempt to leave it will result in banishment to the place behind the red door, called the Void, where there is nothing but eternal darkness and vacuum. So if Larry wants to reunite with his wife, he will have to wait at the crossroads. The man gets drunk and wakes up the next morning with a gap in his memory. He wonders how Anna got there. The woman says that she has a key, and that it is a common misconception that there are no hangovers in the afterlife. Larry asks why some people choose to stay at the crossroads and work, instead of spending time in eternity. Anna explains that some have not yet accepted death, or are simply waiting for loved ones who are still alive. If Larry wanted, he could see his deceased parents, but that would mean spending eternity with them. The man plans to prepare everything for his wife's arrival so that she will feel at home. He does not have to wait long. Soon Joan dies and also wakes up on the train, in her younger body. Anna says goodbye to Larry, wishing him luck in the eternity he has chosen, while Joan has no idea where she is or why. Larry is certain that as soon as his wife dies, she will immediately follow him into his eternity, when suddenly he notices her on the neighboring escalator. At last the couple is reunited. So that his wife does not suffer too much from the realization of her death, Larry explains how everything works. But Joan has already figured it out on her own. The man tells her that now they can go on an endless vacation, but only to one place, once and for all. At that moment they are interrupted by Ryan, Joan's afterlife coordinator, who announces that someone has been waiting for her at the crossroads for 67 years. She looks in shock at her first husband, Luke. Larry recognizes him as the very bartender. Joan cannot hold back her tears at the sight of Luke. The situation quickly grows tense. She has no idea how she can choose between her first love and the man she lived with for 65 years. But in the end she will spend eternity with only one of them. Ryan tries to push her toward choosing Luke, after all he waited for her at the crossroads for so many years. But Joan cannot so easily betray her current husband. Despite this, Ryan arranges a date for Joan and Luke, while Larry reflects on what he should do. Anna says that this is not uncommon here, when someone waits for their love for half a century or more. One way or another, someone in such a triangle always ends up with a broken heart. Yes, Luke is undeniably very attractive, but Larry has an advantage. He lived with Joan for 65 years and gave her children. Meanwhile Luke and Joan walk through the crossroads. He waited for this meeting for so long, preserving the image of his beloved in his memory. And now at last he has waited. Luke hopes that the years of his waiting will be rewarded. But Joan cannot make a choice right now, she needs time to think. Larry however presents her with a fait accompli. He has already chosen several versions of eternity where they could spend the rest of the universe together. He does not want to leave her a choice. Joan explains that everything is complicated. She cannot give up Luke so easily. To distract her, Larry suggests doing some squats. Joan is surprised by how easily she manages it. She still cannot fully get used to her young body, since in the world of the living she had been old for the last several decades. Nevertheless, the woman is not ready to give Larry an answer here and now, and asks him to leave her alone for the time being. Since Larry's week at the Crossroads has ended, he no longer has access to his luxurious apartments. Anna moves him into a modest, cramped room. Now Larry has to find a job in order to secure a more decent standard of living. In an attempt to impress Joan, he asks Anna for a favor, to introduce his wife to her favorite musician, Dean Martin, who died long ago. Anna could arrange that. The next morning when Joan wakes up, Larry comes to her and asks her to go with him. She is not in the mood for surprises, but Larry insists, asking her to trust him. At first Joan is genuinely impressed, but her delight turns into disappointment when she realizes that something is clearly wrong with the musician. Larry whispers to Anna, asking what is going on. She explains that this is not Dean Martin, and that celebrity doubles die too. Luke rudely barges into the date and tries to hand Joan a bouquet of flowers, which leads to a conflict between the two men. Joan shouts for them to stop and demands a private conversation with Anna and Ryan. Larry and Luke wait in tense anticipation while the two afterlife coordinators try to figure out how to resolve this unusual situation. And although it goes against the rules, Joan will be allowed to visit 2 eternities, one for each of her husbands. After that, she will be able to decide which of them to stay with. Joan suggests the option of spending eternity together as 3, but the men shout no in unison. They draw lots, and Luke is granted the honor of spending eternity with Joan first. She had almost forgotten how handsome he was. Joan recalls how everyone wondered why someone as good-looking as him had married someone like her. Luke could have chosen anyone, but he chose her. The couple visits the eternity chosen by Luke, inspired by cold mountain landscapes. Everything Joan loves. It could not be more perfect. Joan's feelings awaken with even greater force. If Luke had not died in the war, they could have lived happily married throughout their entire earthly lives. But perhaps death gave them another chance. All this time Larry cannot find peace. Anna advises him to remind Joan why she fell in love with him in the first place. Larry has no answer to that question, but he will have to find one. Joan tells Luke about her children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She hopes that the fact that she remarried 2 years after his death does not hurt him too deeply. But her life one way or another had to go on. Luke admits that he is saddened by the fact that they never had any of this, children, grandchildren. But he is glad that Joan did. She says that she waited for him for so long. She watched soldiers return from the war and believed to the very end that the news of his death had been a mistake. Luke takes his beloved to a special place, the archive, where a person can view memories from their earthly life. Each eternity has its own archival tunnels. For Luke, this is also his first such experience, since he had never been in eternity before, having faithfully waited for Joan at the Crossroads. The couple watches their love story, from their first meeting to their wedding. Joan cannot hold back her tears as she sees herself seeing her husband off to war. It was the worst day of both their lives. That was when Luke saw his wife for the last time in earthly life. Joan tells him how much she missed him, and they merge into a kiss. But the moment is darkened by Joan's memory in which Larry proposes to her, and she says yes. Larry visits his deceased neighbor Karen, who in earthly life often bothered all the residents of the Homeowners Association. For her afterlife, she chose her 72-year-old age. In fact, Larry is here because he needs help. He asks whether Joan ever mentioned why she fell in love with him. Karen cannot recall anything like that. No one expected that after Luke's death Joan would be able to be happy again. But Larry managed it. Luke is deeply disappointed that Larry proposed to Joan in the very same place, on the pier. It was their place. Joan says that in doing so, Larry was trying to honor the memory of her first husband, but Luke does not believe it. No longer wanting to hear anything, he leaves. Anna tells Larry that he must by any means show Joan that he wants to spend eternity with her. He sneaks into Luke's room, hoping to find at least something that could be used against him. At that moment Luke himself appears, outraged that Larry used Joan's grief to win her over. This leads to a fight between the two men. Joan is in turmoil, not knowing what choice to make. Ryan says that all her life she has taken care of others. Maybe now it is time to take care of what is best for her. Joan visits the second eternity with Larry, on a beach by the sea, where eternal summer reigns. She notes that in earthly life, it would have been a wonderful place for a vacation. Larry asks how his funeral went. Joan answers that many people gathered. He regrets that he was not with his wife at such a difficult moment. But now they are together. Joan asks him to understand that she is in a hopeless situation. She truly loved Luke and cannot ignore the fact that he waited for her for 67 years. Larry assures her that he too would have been ready to wait for as long as it took. Luke finds on the floor of his room a note dropped by Larry during their fight. Larry refuses to go to the archives, thinking that they could easily get lost there. Many people leave the archival tunnels in tears. What if they see something bad there? Joan thinks that they really did have a happy life. She grieves so deeply for Luke, but then Larry appeared and showed her that not everything was over. When the couple returns, they encounter Luke accompanied by their 2 afterlife coordinators. Luke has proof that Larry was ready to enter eternity without his wife. He left a note for her and wanted to pass it on through Anna. Joan is outraged, since only recently her second husband swore that he was ready to wait for her for as long as necessary. In an attempt to justify himself, Larry says that he only wanted to set up an eternity for them. This angers Joan even more, because it turns out that Larry wanted to lure her into eternity by deception. The couple argues. Joan accuses Larry of selfishness. He in turn accuses her of never loving him the way she loved Luke. Perhaps Larry was only a consolation prize. The men are tired of the uncertainty and demand that Joan make a choice right now. They leave her alone so she can think everything through carefully. Joan is in turmoil. Her choice will determine which of her 2 husbands she will spend eternity with. Their deceased, gloomy neighbor Karen visits Joan with a bottle of champagne to offer her support. Luke and Larry simply wait. There is nothing more they can do. Now the choice belongs solely to their wife. While the women relax, the men get drunk at the bar, which brings them closer together. They no longer see each other as enemies. Joan still cannot decide whom to choose. Her decision changes every minute. The next morning, suffering from a hangover, Joan tells Ryan that she has made a decision. Bracing themselves to hear her verdict, her husbands can barely breathe from the tension. Joan declares that she chooses neither of them, because no matter what choice she makes, she will suffer anyway. Perhaps the beauty of life lies in the fact that everything eventually comes to an end. Later, Larry and Luke reflect on why they ended up at roughly the same physical age in the afterlife. The men come to the conclusion that it was Joan who made them happy. It was the period when Luke was planning a family with her, and when Larry had children with her. At some point Larry has a sudden realization and runs to the station. Joan has already boarded the train with Karen and is about to leave forever. Larry asks her to listen to him for at least a minute. Only now does he notice that in the afterlife his wife wears long hair, just as she did during her first marriage, which means that she was happier with Luke. This is not easy for Larry, but he is ready to let Joan go and allow her to spend eternity with her first husband. The most important thing is that she be happy. Luke joins Joan on the train. Larry does his best to hold himself together. Anna and Ryan, by the way, are now a couple. After all, life is empty without love, even after death. Larry asks Anna why she stayed at the Crossroads. The woman replies that she saw her calling in helping people, or their lost souls. She expresses her admiration for Larry's act. He overcame his pride and chose to do the right thing. Meanwhile, Joan enjoys eternal life with her first husband. But when Luke falls asleep, she goes into an archival tunnel and watches the memories of her first meeting with Larry. Secretly, without Luke's knowledge, she returns there again and again, as the archive shows her memories of family life with Larry, including the birth of their first child. Perhaps she made the wrong choice. Luke was her first love. Their short life together was free of hardships and trials, the things that truly test a marriage. With Larry, however, she lived most of her life. They built a family and were happy. An archive attendant advises Joan to stop coming back there. It will not help, she must move on. Luke notices that something is troubling his beloved. She has withdrawn into herself, constantly thinking about Larry. Joan wants to be honest and tells Luke directly that she made the wrong choice. The man does not understand why she cannot simply enjoy what they have. He waited 67 years to get a second chance to live the life with Joan that they never had. It feels so unfair. Joan truly loves him, but what they shared was youthful love, before mortgages, children and responsibilities. Love, however, is not one happy moment, it is a million moments. It is facing all hardships together. Of course it hurts Luke to hear this. If Joan tries to return to the Crossroads, she will be banished to the void. He tries to dissuade her. But Joan has already decided. Without Larry, she does not want eternity. In the end, despite his pain, Luke agrees to help her escape and distracts the archive attendant, giving her a chance to slip away. In the archival tunnels, they say goodbye forever. Joan runs through the dark corridors, pursued by disturbing memories of her life. In desperation trying to leave this place, she feels that she is running away from herself. Finally, she finds her way back to the Crossroads and learns that she is being searched for as a fugitive. Joan runs into Anna and Ryan, and they hide her from law enforcement. All she wants is to find the eternity that Larry chose. It turns out that he never left the Crossroads, but took a job as a bartender in Luke's place. Why would he need an eternity without Joan? The lovers are reunited, to spend eternity together. Their perfect eternity resembles their earthly life. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.